Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at a more advanced mixing concept, which is parallel processing. I'll be showing this on two examples, parallel drum compression and also adding effects to a guitar recording in parallel. I've added timestamps in the description in case you want to skip ahead to any of that, but in basic terms, parallel processing is simply when you have your track or recording and you can add effects to it, but you also make a copy of that track, add a load of other effects and processing, and then you blend it back with the original track later, and it gives you a ton of control. But it's going to make a lot more sense when we just dive right into the DAW, so let's do that right now. I'm going to be using FL Studio 20, but this technique works in any DAW, so you should be able to follow along. First things first, I've got this energetic track, and I'm going to be using parallel compression on the drum bus. So all of my drums are here in grey, and I've sent them all to this drum bus here all together in grey to add some effects. So nothing necessarily sounds wrong, I just want to add some more cohesion and some more tone to the drums, maybe get some more impact, some more crunch. I want to experiment with things. Now I could simply add effects straight to the drum bus. There's nothing wrong with that, it works great. Pro mixers do that all the time. The reason I don't want to do that is that I'm a bit worried that I'm going to over compress and really crunch up that drum bus too much. So the first thing I'm going to do is go grab a brand new empty channel. So just 19 here, I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to scroll with my mouse and I'm going to move it in right beside my drum bus here. So this is where I've sent my drums to, channel 2, and you can see they're all going out to the master. But what I want to do is make a parallel copy, so just another copy off to the side. First things first, let's rename channel 2. Middle click, I'm going to rename it drum comp for drum compression. Then I'm going to select my original channel again. Now I'm going to go down to the bottom here. Now I could simply select route to this track, that works perfectly. But if I select route to this track, I can't solo the compressed track. I have to be listening to the original and compressed at the same time. So I'm actually going to do a different trick, do side chain to this track, then going back to the drum channel again. At the end of the effects chain, I'm going to add a plugin called Fruity Send. Now, if you go here, add plugin, it should be up here in the gain section, Fruity Send. What this does is it just sends a copy of the audio to another track you have it linked to. If I select in this box, send to drum comp, now it's going to be sending audio from this point in the mixer straight to this compressed channel here. So if I just press play and I just solo the drums, you'll hear that all we're getting is a double of the original signal. Exactly the same. But the real magic happens when I add effects. So drum comp, I've got this selected, slot 1, I'm going to add a compressor, TDR Kotelnikov. This is a really nice compressor. There's a free version of this one as well, it's excellent. So now with this compressor turned on, I'm going to mute the original drum channel, and then I'm going to pull up the drum comp, and I'm going to be adjusting parameters here until I get a really fat compressed tone. So I'm going to adjust the threshold until we're getting compression, loads of compression, up the ratio to maybe 4 or 5 to 1. I'm just going to really mess this up. Let's get a really short attack so we're cutting the transients off. Fast release, so it's really pumping. Wow. And now what we're going to do is play everything together and blend in this drum compression. Then I'm going to turn it on and off and you'll hear some dramatic differences. So really listen to how all of those hi-hats and claps are really brought forward in the mix, and the kick just has this sort of under crunch to it. It's really a totally different tone that we've created. Maybe good, maybe bad, but at least we got to try it. Something else you can do, of course, you don't have to stop at compression. You could add anything you want. You know, I could add a virtual tape machine and add even more crunch and just mess it up. However, there is one downside to this, and that is that for the keen-eyed amongst you, you'll notice that pushing this up increases the gain of everything, so I am tricking myself. Really, the fair way to do this is to push this up, pull the original drum channel down, and balance it so that the volume is roughly where it was before. You don't want to be tricking yourself into thinking that it's sounding far better when really you're just adding a load of volume. But you can clearly hear that there's more than just volume being added. We're adding a lot of tone, crunch, texture, impact, whatever you want to call it. It sounds great. So let's move on to a slightly more calm and soothing example for the end of the video. I have a mono recording of an acoustic guitar just doing some finger picking. Let's just play it completely dry with no effects so you can hear what we're dealing with. So you can hear that it's quite pretty, but it has no ambience and it's very, very thin, very narrow. Usually with guitars, I like to double track, but in this case with all the finger picking, I think it would have been too intense. And also there's situations where you only have one mic if you're recording singing and guitar at the same time in a live event. And what I'm going to do is add more ambience and texture to this guitar. The first thing I usually do is just on the same track that I've sent the guitar to, so I've sent it to track 18 here, I've added a little bit of EQ and a little bit of compression. Usually I just add a touch of reverb on the track here, but what this does is it often just washes the guitar out and I lose that central focus of the guitar. And it can be pretty, but I tend to find it all just sort of mushes together a little bit, even if you adjust the dry and wet controls. So I'm going to turn that reverb off, and hopefully you can see down on my mixer here that I've set up 2 new sends. So I'm just going to undo these. On the guitar track, I have 2 Fruity Send plugins. Then I go from the guitar track to this reverb track, right click, sidechain to this track, onto the delay, sidechain to this track, back on the guitar channel, Fruity Send. The first one I'm going to send to the reverb, and on the second one I'm going to send it to the delay. Now I'm going to turn on the reverb track. What we have here is various different reverbs that I've been experimenting with, but the trick is you have to have it 100% wet. We don't want any of the dry signal, so whichever reverb you're using has to be wet with no dry signal. If I turn off the guitar, we can hear just the reverb. It's a really nice room ambience. So now I'll turn the guitar back on and I'll blend in this reverb, and we should maintain that central guitar, and it should just fill out a subtle, lush ambience that just stereo spreads everything a little bit. Now if I turn it on and off, so I think it adds a subtle ambience without washing everything out. Another benefit of doing the reverb on a separate channel in parallel is that you can add other effects after the reverb. So I can take an EQ and I can sculpt and shape this reverb. Maybe I want it to be bright or darker. I've got all the control in the world. Maybe after the EQ I want to add an imager and make everything really stereo. And the benefit of doing it in parallel is that I can add in all these effects without affecting the original guitar whatsoever. I can add compressors, EQs, imagers, and the original raw guitar stays natural, neutral, and balanced. So let's now take a listen to this, and then I'll turn on a delay channel and show you some more stuff. So let's turn on that delay. So you can hear in the decays, there's a delay going on there. So I've done the same thing, only this time I'm using Fruity Delay 3. None of the dry, I've turned it all the way down, I've got the wet turned up, just experimented with a ping pong delay until it sounds the way I want. So if I turn off the original guitar, that's what's playing the whole time underneath. Now I'll play everything together and I'll turn the effects on and off, and I'll indicate that on the screen. And the reason I love doing parallel processing on very simple guitars like this is because often you're dealing with a guitar and a vocal, and that's it. And if a guitar and a vocal are both dead in the middle of a stereo field, they sort of just compete with each other. And if you can do something to subtly spread that guitar, give a little bit of a cushion of ambience around the vocal, all of a sudden the vocal doesn't feel so alone, and it tends to spread the guitar's energy around the stereo field, so you're really making the most of everything. I probably used a little bit too much reverb there because I tend to go a little bit heavy on the reverb, but as long as you're not drowning it in reverb and you're just creating a subtle room ambience, it actually sounds more natural than leaving it dry. Because when you've got a single microphone, you're capturing an entire room's ambience, which is in stereo, but you're playing it back in mono. So you hear all the ambience, but it's all folded in to one track and it doesn't sound normal. So if you then create an ambience in parallel, like we have with this reverb here, we're creating an ambience and spreading it around again, it actually sounds more natural than not having the reverb. Many people say that adding reverb and whatnot to a guitar is unnatural, and it's better to just leave it raw the way it was recorded. And I often agree with that, but I would also say that a microphone isn't really natural either. The way that a microphone captures sound and plays it back through headphones or speakers, that doesn't usually sound like it did in the room. Even just adding a splash of reverb actually makes it sound a lot more like the room I was actually recording in. Anyway, I won't go on for too long, but I hope this parallel processing technique helps you. It can be useful for loads of things. So parallel compression of vocals. If you have very delicate vocals that you don't want to mess up, you can make like a thicker version and subtly blend it in so that your original vocal retains a ton of dynamic range, but you're just giving it some support at all times. You can compress drums, guitars, anything really, but do remember that often less is more, and while you have this brand new technique in your toolbox, you don't want to be applying it to everything. It makes life more complicated than it needs to be if you're using it dozens of times in a mix, and often just applying some simple effects onto a track is all you really need, and that's often all that a lot of the best mixers in the world do. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next video too. Bye for now.